What is happening in Ukraine right now is of particular interest to Canada and Canadians because, well, of the Ukrainian diaspora, very large number in this country. And some of them are still Ukrainian citizens. Many have family and close friends still in Ukraine. And people are dying now. The protest is dividing the country. Chris Alexander, Minister of Citizenship and Immigration, joins us from Montreal. Welcome to you, Minister.
Thanks very much, Michael. Great to be with you.
Now, of course, Ukraine particularly so. There are so many close links between Ukraine and Canada. We can't not be involved, I suppose.
Well, exactly. We were the first country to recognize an independent Ukraine. We've played a huge role in observing elections and supporting the development of democracy. We have these huge, vast people-to-people ties that really do move in both directions. And so recent events have concerned us, and events in the past couple of days have forced us to reflect very deeply on where we're going, because Ukraine was moving towards integration with Europe. It had the opportunity to sign this association agreement. The violence goes with repression that could really pull things back in the wrong direction.
Yeah. The problem, I suppose, is that this is a democratically elected government. Now, because of the control that Russia has, the influence that Moscow has, events are extremely worrying. But if the people have voted for, and the country is divided, that there is much of eastern Ukraine in particular that does support what the government is doing.
Yeah, absolutely. There is some support. There are some that would like Ukraine to be closer to Russia. And you're right, elections were held, and this government took the helm. They weren't perfect elections, but there was a choice. But violence against peaceful protesters, violence in that very symbolic Maidan in the symbol of Kiev, violence by security authorities is something new. And the right to freedom of speech, the right to freedom of assembly in Ukraine are under threat right now. That's what concerns us. And we've seen strong-arm measures by the current government and by some of Ukraine's Russian partners to ensure Ukraine doesn't negotiate in good faith with the European Union, and to bring Russia bring Ukraine closer to Russia by hook or by crook. And that is what worries us, because the vast majority of Ukrainians do want a better economic future, brighter economic future. They want opportunity, they want prosperity. They know that has to go with integration into Europe, and their hopes and aspirations are being trampled at the moment.
I suppose that there could be a time where people from Ukraine do seek refugee status. I don't know, but there were reforms when it came to refugees coming to Canada, which I think have been very successful. They've reduced the number of people claiming refugee status from countries where there is freedom, liberty, democracy. Now, I think what you've done here is extremely effective, but there are some people, of course, who are criticizing you.
There are. Most of those people make the mistake of thinking that people whose claims are rejected are still refugees, or people who self-select are refugees, and that anyone who comes to this country and describes themselves in those terms is a refugee. That's just not the case. And when we went down the path to letting that be the case, we opened ourselves to abuse. It cost all levels of government enormously. It clogged up our system with people who really didn't have genuine claims, who weren't facing persecution. And it penalized, first and foremost, genuine refugees who are sitting in refugee camps in every part of the world, all around Syria, in Africa, in Latin America, and other parts of Asia, and who have seen Canada as a beacon. And Canadians do want to help genuine refugees. They don't want to be open to abuse. So the reforms we've made have already saved us $600 million, if you can believe it. We had 3 members of the European Union that were in the top 10 source countries for refugee claims. The United States was in the top 10. That just wasn't right. And so now they're out of the top league, as it were, and countries like Congo and Afghanistan, Syria are back where they should be, generating the refugee flows that Canadians want as part of our overall immigration program. It was abuse. It often involved organized crime.
Yep.
And anyone who pretends otherwise is really misleading people.
I think it's a very interesting point, because it's not that suddenly compassion and justice has disappeared. A country like Hungary, for example, I think the claims have declined by 97%. Well, anyone who knows Hungary knows it's not perfect, but it is a liberal democracy. There are elements in the country that are undesirable of the far right, but the government, the electoral system, is not that different from ours. So to say you're a refugee from Hungary, it defies belief, as opposed to Syria, where I suspect more people will seek to leave that country, and we have to open our doors.
Exactly. And Europe, it's 28 member states. All of them have a responsibility and have the ambition to receive refugees from elsewhere in the world. Europe is our biggest partner in the refugee business, in supporting UNHCR, in dealing with the aftermath of conflict, the United States as well. And we don't, they wouldn't welcome it if refugees came from Canada, which they clearly don't do. Because their system doesn't allow it, and because people prefer to stay here. But it was absurd. It was a paradox. And to give health care to people whose refugee claims have failed is absolutely indefensible in our view. We don't give it to visitors to Canada, visitors that may be coming to see you and me, Michael, our families. We don't give it to permanent residents, people we've selected to be economic immigrants to Canada for the first 3 months in Ontario. Why should we give it to failed refugee claimants who are really trying to game the system?
Quite so, quite so. Minister, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks very much, Michael. All the best.